What's up, Lorcana Players? Havry here, and as promised, I'm back with the top 10 weakest cards revealed so far from Rise of the Floodborn. As stated from my last video, all of this is just my opinion, and I don't claim any of what I say to be 100% factual. Let's not waste any time and jump right in. Starting us off at number 10, we have Dragon Gem. Dragon Gem is a 3-ink uninkable item, and for 3 ink, you can return a card with support from your discard to your hand. This card is the one I was most on the fence on, but after breaking it down in my head, I personally don't think this is a very good card. First of all, it's uninkable, which if you're running a card that you can't ink, it better be very important and have a lot of impact on the game. Second, I feel like this card is in the wrong color. I feel like it would have been a lot better if it was in Sapphire, which is the color that has the most support cards. And third, I just don't think it's worth the cost. You have to pay 3 ink to even get this item on the board, first of all, and then every turn you want to use it, you're going to spend another 3 ink just to activate its ability. It's not that I think this card is outright unusable, I just think it's a bit undertuned is all. I imagine as more support characters are revealed, this will become better, but as of right now, I just don't think there's enough to warrant running it. We have a similar case at number 9 with Grand Duke. Grand Duke is a 2-ink 2/2 that quests for 1. Its ability lets your prince, princess, king, and queen characters get +1 attack. The reason why I think this card isn't good is because its archetype doesn't really exist yet. Its ability isn't bad on paper, and it could help in the early game if you have a 1-ink opener that will get an additional attack, but other than that, its impact on a lot of archetypes just isn't felt. You aren't going to see anybody running a princess deck or a king deck because the support for those keywords just doesn't really exist outside of this one card. I think even if those archetypes did exist, just adding 1 attack to your cards isn't that big of a deal, and I'd personally rather run a 2-ink character that adds more impact directly to my game plan instead of just setting up a slightly bigger threat. Like the last card, it's not awful, but there's not really a reason to run it. Not yet at least. We got a big one at number 8, Raya, Leader of the Heart. Raya is a 6-ink 5/3 that quests for 2, shift 4, and its ability, whenever this character challenges a damage character, she takes no damage from that challenge. So, this card doesn't seem bad at all on paper. Its effect is quite nice, but I think this card won't see play for one simple reason. Its health. You may be wondering why I think its health is a problem considering its ability, but it becomes clear once you realize just how many cards can get around this effect. The simple answer is just using Smash, but literally any combination of 3 damage would work. Even if you're able to trigger this card's effect, which only works when attacking damaged characters by the way, not every character, a lot of lower cost cards have 3 attack and can easily just counter to take it out. But to even get to that point, you have to survive a turn with this on the board, and I just don't think that'll happen considering how common hard removal is in this game. Just not a card worth investing in my opinion. For 7 and 6, I'm going to combine these cards together because they both have a very similar effect, thus bad for the same reasons. I'm talking about Donald Duck Sleepwalker and Tigger One of a Kind. Tigger is a 3-ink 3/3 with quest for 1, and Donald is a 3-ink 0/5 that quests for 1, and they both have the ability, whenever you play an action, this character gets +2 attack this turn. The problem with these cards is until you invoke their effect, they just aren't good cards, and even when you do, it just turns them into mediocre cards. I will say Tigger isn't that bad, you can at least use a 3-ink 3/3, Donald, on the other hand, definitely got the short end of the stick. Having 0 attack is absolutely terrible, and even though it boasts good health for a 3-ink card, the most that'll do for you is to let it take a lot of hits when you eventually have to quest with the card. There just isn't enough support for an action-centered deck yet, and even if there was, these effects are so minor that they aren't worth running. Not much else to say, just not very good. Alright, the top 5, here we are. Starting with number 5, we got Madam Mim Fox. Madam Mim Fox is a 3-ink 4/3 that quests for 1. Its effect, whenever you play this character, banish her or return another chosen character of yours to your hand, and it has Rush. The gimmick with the Madam Mim cards is they're supposed to be very powerful cards for their cost, but require you to return a card to your hand. But I think they forgot this gimmick when the Fox variant, because this card is just really bad. I know it's shaping up for Amethyst to want to return cards to their hand, but why would you want to risk running such a dead card in the early game? Even in the late game, you're going to have plenty of other ways to deal 4 damage, and I know this is just personal bias, but I'm not sold on the returning cards to your hand gimmick yet. There's a lot of solid cards, like the Merlin cards, to combine with the Madam Mim cards, but I just don't see it as a win condition yet, and I feel like out of all the cards in that archetype, this one is by far the worst one. If you want to use a card with Rush for that purpose and nothing more, just run Gruesome and Grim and an actual good card instead. For number 4, we have Rigans, not so, Marvelous Trap. Rigans' Marvelous Trap is an uninkable 3-ink item. Banish this item, each opponent loses 2 lore. Man, this card sucks. I'm sorry, there's no sugarcoating it. This is just one of those cards where I can't see any reason to run it. First of all, uninkable, obvious red flag. Second, it's an item that you have to banish to use, which I don't think there's been a single good one outside of Popsicle from the last video. And lastly, its effect just isn't all that impactful. I know Emerald's gimmick is supposed to be taking away from your opponent and disrupting him, but is losing 2 lore really that disruptive compared to the 3 ink your opponent had to spend to play it? Why is this an item anyways? It could have just been an action. Do you really see anybody setting this down and not using it right away unless you just don't have 2 lore to lose? I don't know, man, this one just doesn't do it for me. It's probably broken in duels with more than one opponent though. So, remember last week how I said Emerald was the big winner of Rise of the Floodborn? Well, on the opposite end of the spectrum, the biggest loser is definitely Ruby. I didn't plan on this happening, but the remaining 3 cards are also all one color, starting with number 3, Lady Termain, Overbearing Matriarch. Lady Termain is a uninkable 2-cost 2/2 that quests for 1. Its ability, whenever you play this character, each opponent with more lore than you loses 1 lore. This card is simply put a huge downgrade of an already mediocre card, Aladdin Street Rat. Sure, this card costs 1 less, but it's uninkable, and won't even proc its ability all the time. I honestly don't have much else to say, just why would you run this? The runner-up is Honest John Not So Honest. Honest John Not So Honest is an uninkable 3-cost 2/3 that quests for 1. Its ability is, whenever you play a Floodborn character, your opponent loses 1 lore. So, going back on the previous entry, I stand by the belief that unless it's consistent, removing lore from your opponent isn't all that powerful. Well, imagine instead of guaranteeing a 2 lore lost or even having the chance to lose 1 lore immediately, you have to play Honest John Not So Honest and hope it survives long enough to get that 1 lore lost. Floodborn cards just aren't common enough for this to even get off once, and considering they're all expensive, it won't be likely that you'll be able to play one before Honest John is taken off the field. Its stats are bad for the cost, only being a 3-ink 2/3 with 1 lore, but on top of that, it's uninkable, making it even worse. If there was a good amount of low-cost Floodborns so you could have maybe 2 procs off in 1 turn, I might change my mind, but to do so, you'd have to have 2 other characters already set up, ready to shift, and also have enough ink to play this card. I'm sorry, but with how much board control there is in this game, that situation just isn't happening. Even in the unlikely scenario where you have an Honest John and a Floodborn card ready, this card only becomes slightly better than Aladdin Street Rat. And would you really go through all those hoops for a card that's only slightly better than Aladdin Street Rat? Yeah, didn't think so. The only thing not so honest about John is how bad he is. And finally, at number 1, you should all see this coming, it's Mulan Soldier in Training. I already talked about this card before, but to catch you up to speed, Mulan Soldier in Training is a 4-ink uninkable 4/3 that quests for 1 and has Rush. I really have no words that could describe how astronomically terrible this card is. Like, how do you have Madam Pim and this card in the same set? I may have not been impressed by that card, but at the very least, I can see a world where you can sort of use it to your advantage. In your hand, Mulan is useless. On the board, Mulan is borderline useless and outclassed by so many other 4-drops. Like, look at some of these cards side by side and tell me you'd rather run Mulan than any of these other 4-cost characters. The only, and I mean the only way I could see this card being ran is if a Mulan shift card literally allowed you to win the game by shifting onto it, and this card was your only option. There actually is a Mulan shift in this set, and it's not too bad honestly, but guess what? It's not even in Ruby. This card quite literally serves 0 purpose. I challenge anybody out there to win a tournament with this card in your deck. I genuinely don't see a world where that happens because of how running a single copy of this card in your deck sets you back. It's actually so bad. And that concludes the list. Honestly, overall, I've been liking a lot of cards from this set. I think it'll be a lot of fun to mess around with some of the new archetypes that'll emerge after it's finally released. Which card do you think is the weakest from this set? Feel free to comment below, I'm curious to know what you guys think. And if you guys enjoyed this video, feel free to like and subscribe if you want more stuff like this. Thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.